Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show. Michelle, welcome to the Principal Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
It is my pleasure. Let's jump straight into it. What's the story, Michelle? What led you to build Sciata? And hopefully I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, so I had a unique, entry point for Sciata. So the company is private equity owned, and as a investor, I came in and invested in a round of funding that they were doing in 2024. And then, as it just so happened, the CEO at the time needed to leave for personal reasons to move to the other side of the United States. And the private equity independent sponsor looked at me and said, "Hey, actually, your background is great for this role. Why don't you come in?" And so what he liked is that I've done startup work in professional services delivery and labor management, delivering high quality services, but also that I've worked many, many years in technology, like 26 years at Intel. So kind of bringing that hybrid role and being really commercially focused on growing the business.
So what's the problem that you solve with Sciata? What's the outcome that you have help people achieve?
So what we're trying to do is help our clients with transformative business value. And by that, we mean like deploying new software systems, maybe cleaning up their data and letting them monetize on the value of their data. But we come in as a boutique consultancy and we help them solve their business problems. We come at it from a deep technical expertise. And a lot of our clients, they have IT or a little bit of technology, but they're not, woven with technology in their DNA. And so we kind of help them apply the technology to improve their business value. But I usually start with, what is your business strategy? What makes the company unique? And what is your current technology stack? Because by knowing that, we can then figure out how to guide them down the right paths. It could be an AI deployment, but it doesn't have to be.
So before we get into the who do you do that for, what's the benefit of all this? I mean, I get it, right? I want to be technology enabled. I want better culture. I want to be transformed. To achieve what? What's the goal exactly?
Well, usually they're gaining market share. With adoption of AI, it's, can we leapfrog our competition by being one of the earlier firms to get on board and adopt AI and really change up the way the work is done? But at the end of the day, it's either better customer service for their end clients, or again, a new product offering, a new service offering, a new way to engage their customers. But that usually then again results in something like revenue uplift. Or in the case of when we do work with private equity firms, we not only let them own the IP, because again, we're doing this as a consulting firm, but that IP that they now own is an asset. And when they someday go to sell that firm, they're going to get a higher multiple on selling that firm. So again, that's what I mean by truly transformative value.
That makes a lot of sense. So I heard private equity firms, I guess the portfolio companies as well, right? Who is it that?
Yeah, we do have today very large, Fortune 500 class customers. I just know that as we go after new customers, I aim a little bit lower, knowing that we could grow with them. But also knowing that some of the very largest companies already have a very full Rolodex of suppliers and their sales cycles like 2 years. And so we try to kind of aim more mid-market so that we can grow with our clients and really add a lot of value over time. We today do not do a lot of work with startups, just because, again, I want to get in there and do multiple sets of work with the client. And usually startups, it's like they only got one thing to begin with.
So who would that be? I mean, earlier stage companies like mid-market makes sense to me. But is there a particular industry, company size? Everybody is all about AI, right?
Yeah. So
angle that you take?
we focus our ideal customer profile on typically firms 100 million in revenue or greater in the financial services industry, healthcare services industry, specialty retail, or manufacturing. Those are kind of our big four. And we basically do a lot of work in those industries. And then what resonates is the case studies and the work we've done, as we go talk to new prospects. It makes a lot of sense because it's in their kind of industry DNA.
do you see those industries are more prone to be disrupted by AI? Or like why those big four specifically?
Well, I think again with financial services, there's a lot of data, and so again, they have been used to trying to monetize on that data for decades already. And so they're not new to the idea that our data may have a lot of value. That said, they're also highly regulated. And that's the same thing with healthcare. And so you go, we know a way that we can go in and make sure that they are not only getting the value, but staying compliant, meeting regulatory requirements as we go. For instance, in financial services, AI models have to be audited every so often, like once a year, every year and a half, by a third party independent firm. And that's just OCC regulations. And so, we look at things like that as a positive or a wind in our sails as we get in with our clients and do great work, as opposed to others may view it as yet another regulatory burden and hurdle and not easy to go deploy the technology in that space.
That does make a lot of sense. So, as I just said, right, there is everybody is all about AI, and everybody is claiming that they can implement AI, 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 AI. How do you stand out in a market that has become so noisy with everyone claiming? I mean, first of all, you have the rate of innovation, right, with a new AI
Mm-hmm.
solution basically popping up every single day. But there is also so much noise around this AI space. So, how do you brand? How do you market? What is working for you, Michelle, to get the attention of, I'm going to assume, the decision makers, the C suite, the executive level people within those $100 million plus of industries that a lot of people want to go after? How do you stand out from the noise, market, brand to get the attention of those people?
I think it's a blend of both driving thought leadership, but also really listening to the customer. What have they already tried? I think a lot of companies by now have said, hey, we already rolled out Copilot, to every employee. And I go, that's to me like a very first kind of step in the AI direction. But there's so many flavors and so much complexity to AI. That should not be where your journey ends. You need to really understand from that client, what have they already tried? What has worked? What has not worked? Where are the capabilities and the willingness of their employees to adopt this stuff. I think today, a lot of times, the barrier in adoption is not that the technology is capable, it's more that the people are willing to embrace it and see with AI, there's a potential to completely redesign a workflow. I say it's the once every 10, 20 year clean sheet of paper kind of exercise. And so you really have to take a change management approach to this and think through how do we not just talk about dates and timelines and deliverables around deploying the tech, but bringing the people along that journey as well, because it may take them months, if not a year or more, to really adopt the new business process flow, see the value from it, see how their jobs are different, and get excited about the new skills they have as individuals now that they're in a new way of doing business.
So that's the positioning, right? And for me, it does make a lot of sense. And there is this whole thing around your AI solutions are only going to be as good as the data that you have. But what has worked for you specifically, Michelle, to get this traction? So word of mouth, referral, credentials, right? Obviously, you have authority in the space, but do you have a specific mechanism to, I'm not talking about sales just yet, but really like get leads, basically, get the word out, get Sciata,
So
Sciata.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
science and data.
And
So yeah, I think what really works for us is also referrals, because again, I think because we're doing highly complex work that moves the needle, it's also risky. We know that the persona of the buyer at our client, they're putting their reputational risk as a business person on the line by choosing which vendor do they go with for this type of project. And so we want to make them feel like I'm making a good choice. I'm working with a partner that's going to be with me for the long haul, but also that they're coming referred in by somebody I know and trust for over a decade. So again, I may not know them personally for a decade, but if we can again get in via a referral source like that, that certainly is very helpful.
how do you see this in the future? Like, is it only going to be word of mouth and referral, in your opinion, because there is only the trust and the authority that can really be applied to that specific channel? Or do you see ways of getting in front of more people? How do you think about this?
I think, we're trying right now some AI enabled sales outreach. because again, I say we have to drink our own champagne. We can't just go out and talk to all of our clients about how wonderful they should be doing with AI, and then we're doing things the old spreadsheet, by hand method. And so while I do know that in-person communications and, face-to-face meetings and events definitely help you build trust and credibility quicker, you have to support that with, AI outreach, AI matching. I'm trying a new tool right now called Boardy Boardman that basically will kind of scour the universe and say, these are your ideal clients that are currently signaling they'd be open to a conversation around adopting AI, and maybe digging into what's working for them and not working. And so again, starting with, just that conversation. I'm not here to try to pitch an exact solution or, divine that I already presuppose I know their problem deeply. I want to first listen, and understand what are they going through, and is there a match? Maybe they're not ready. Maybe they're still in the building awareness phase to their problem, and they need to kind of let that percolate a little bit more. But then can we keep those relationships fresh through AI tools, through newsletters? Obviously, AI is super helpful in generating content, but I always say we then take a heavy human pencil to it, because nobody wants to read. I think even AI lately, or LinkedIn has put on you can mark stuff as AI slop, that if people are just too quick and running off to the presses with auto-generated stuff, that again, I call it word salad. When you read through it and you're like, I don't even know what that just told me. But it used a lot of the key words. To me, that is a leading indicator of that's not authentic. There's not a human behind that message. And we want to make sure that with whatever we do, we really have a human behind that message.
So what's the right intersection? Because the more I see, so LinkedIn, you're right, is the perfect example of this. I mean, I think 90% of the content is just AI content that is regurgitated with more or less results. I mean, again, everybody has their own strategy. But we start to really see this pattern of people interact with chatbots now. People receive gazillions of outreach each and every day that all look the same, because at the end of the day, the AIs are always going to base themselves on more or less the same thing. And they are going back to trust and authority that is almost like, the in-person handshaking kind of deal. So what's the right intersection in your opinion? Because you are at the forefront of the AI, right? At the same time, when we talk about high-ticket professional services, what's the right mix of human versus AI in a marketing and sales process, in your opinion?
And I don't think it's 50-50, or can I put any percent on it? But I go, even if I have AI generated content, again, it's getting polished, edited, by a human. But then supplementing that with, I'd say about a third of the touch points are either a phone call, a voice text, a handwritten note. We're noticing that what's getting people to turn out is like 10, 20 person curated events around a thought topic. Because people are even saying, yeah, I don't want to go to a 200,000 person conference. I just feel like I'm at a sea, and you hear the same darn thing on panels over and over again. And so could you bring together these thought leader dinners or a lunch, or, again, really just it's sometimes bringing a topic that is, again, to something that the audience is interested in, and not straight into, punch them in the face around like, where are you at on AI? A lot of the folks we're dealing with are C-suite. And so I field a lot of questions on like, how do you navigate a board journey of like becoming on a board of directors, and what are the different models, and how would you start a journey like that? And so again, to me, that's paying it forward and really showing that you want to get to know the human and build the relationship with them, versus just making it transactional. Like in 5 minutes, can I get to where you're at in your buying cycle and what I can offer you?
Amen to that. So walk me through this. Referrals, sales agent going out, but at the end of the day, how do you take all this from brand authority signal to a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement, we rock and roll? What does that all look like in the day and age of AI?
So we're pretty strict inside Sciata about, we really call everything a lead until we're really, really sure. There is a concrete signal around, they have a budget, there's a decision timeline, there's a decision maker. We've understood what is going to be their process to go make a decision. And is this like they want to decide in 2 weeks or 2 months? When we can answer those questions, then it becomes a deal. But even in our consulting case, again, because it's high consequence, the deal from start to finish may take a few months for the client to make a decision. I'm also big on getting the win-loss analysis. So we don't win everything. I go, it's not a tube, it's sadly a funnel. But can I go back to the people that we did not win with and say, can you give me feedback? And it's a structured interview for 30 minutes to say, tell us where we did well. We're going to want to repeat that. But where did we miss the mark? Where did these other competitors either message it differently, touch on a different audience? Maybe they found a different facet of the decision-making process that we didn't know about that we need to, in future opportunities, address. And especially, again, as we talk to PE-led companies, sometimes there's an advisor from the PE firm. And so you go, that's a key stakeholder. We need to blend that into our proposals so that they don't feel ignored, or that, they are getting out of this process what they need to do to help influence that decision as well. So I look at that and go, there's just pure gold in those meetings. And then usually you stand out because not a lot of companies will take the time to go do those win-loss interviews.
How many of the deals that you lose are you conducting an interview with? Curious. Because that's a great method. And I don't think most professional service firm owners actually do it. So what would you say is a healthy number of leads in percentage?
Oh, we ask on all. Now, we don't get the interview on all. Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes the client's just like, nope, we're too busy, we're moving on. But I would say at least half the time we get the 30-minute meeting. And because again, they look at it as like, wow, okay, this is what I call an adult conversation of like, hey, we know we're not perfect. This is a human-led, human-driven business. Yeah. But the only way you get better is to ask the questions and do the discovery and learn and make changes and tweak your process versus, sadly, calling them some expletive, moving them into the loss column and then going on to the next thing and hoping that the next time they have an opportunity open that you're going to just somehow magically do better. Because to me, that's just throwing, dartboards at a dart. Or throwing darts at a dartboard. So yeah, I just look at this and go, the only thing you can ask is to learn. And that Sciata, that's definitely our culture, is we are a learning organization. It's one of our values is continuous learning. We just have to be always, leaning into that and understanding it, because I do think, again, it's one of these things that can truly set you apart.
Love that. Did you have people come back on their decision after such an interview and be like, actually, you know what? We might end up doing this. Like, is that one of the outcomes?
Not immediately, but I do notice that I feel like the second round, when they have another opportunity, they reach out and say, hey, we would like to include you in this RFQ, and you go, okay, wow, they didn't have to do that. Again, they could have just stayed with their current set of incumbents. And so again, it's in the discovery asking, how many are you considering in this RFQ, and who's the current incumbent supplier, and what about what they're doing both delights you, but also you're not satisfied with. Because obviously if you're doing an RFQ, you're not super thrilled with the incumbent. And so learning from that process, that'll help you do a better job in responding to that RFQ that has come out.
Yeah. I like that. That does make sense. Playing for the long term. Talk to me about retention, Michelle. So you come in, you help with AI, you get them to get better results. And then what? How do you solve the next problem and the next problem? How do you think about client retention? Not as in, let's make the most out of each and every client, but more as in, let's help as much as possible each and every client, and therefore command a longer relationship.
Yeah, we have robust account management practices in place, which is like we need to be having a quarterly business review with each of our clients and asking again those honest conversations of where are we at now on the scale of immature to mature on working with you. Admittedly, with some of our clients, we're very transactional right now. So asking them for that feedback of what would it take? What would we be doing to move up and be viewed by you as a more strategic technology partner to what you're doing? And so that will help us, again, guide our initiatives. Look for what are the top 2 challenges their company's facing. We have one client right now where we know they are pivoting their entire business from being historically a hardware business to now being a solutions provider. So you go, okay, great. That's a very hard transition to make. How are they going about that? What kind of change management practices are they deploying? So really saying, okay, who are the leaders behind that? Who's leading that charge, and how do we get in with those clients? I also say it's building out your network of contacts at those clients. So again, we may get an initial win with an initial team or department, But you go, how do we over time broaden and get 5, 10, 20 data points at that company so that you're never solely dependent on one person? Because in technology, everybody transitions. They may leave the company for whatever reason, and we don't ever want to be solely dependent on a strong relationship with one person.
My mentor calls this the whales versus the minnows. Of course, you want whales because it's nice to have whales and like make lots of revenue from one account. Allows you to go more in depth as well. But if you become dependent and one client makes up for a majority or at least a large portion of your revenue, there is a huge risk there. So
Yes.
good strategy. That makes sense to me. I like your style, Michelle. So I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball question at you now.
Okay.
In your mind. What is your number one challenge right now? What is the one nut that you're trying to crack that once you crack, you take the whole thing to the next level? What would that be for you?
We're in the process right now of reinventing our sales engine because, again, coming in, the company was founder-led for many years. The founder was charismatic, had tons of relationships. And so historically, it was just go sell to my network and my friends. And so you go, how do we move that into more of a structure where it's not so dependent on me as a leader, for instance? How do we make it more that we could have 5 or 10 salespeople someday and that we're consistent in how we're doing that sales motion and we're getting consistent results from that? And so we did actually hire a sales advisor, and we're going through kind of that process, and we're now into the making what I call many small bets to see which of these things are working and which are not working, so that we can double down in Q4 of this year with the what's working. Because again, I think we've had historically 2 clients that are very large. And so we need to diversify, and get into growing those minnows, but also adding more and more minnows to the pond.
Amen to that. And what do you see as one of the biggest opportunities? What, excites you to work on in the next, 6 to 12 months?
Well, I think, again, there's no shortage of companies today that are grappling with, we have to transform. We cannot stand still. We cannot just keep doing things the way we did it last year and the year before. I will say there is a bit of counter momentum with, at times we get into an account or a prospect and we find that the leader is kind of what I call the doubtful Doug. He's hanging around waiting for 12 more months to hit some milestone where he can retire and get all the benefits and the gold watch. And really is just passive aggressively kind of foeing, going through an AI adoption. And so you're like, okay, we don't want to be caught up in that. How do we, again, broaden the relationships? Are there other personas in the organization, maybe employees who are seeing themselves 5, 10 years, either in that industry, in that company, at that culture, and wanting to help us, advance? And how do we get those folks pulling for us as well? Because I go, it's really hard, again, to deploy truly transformative work without getting everybody voting with their feet and truly being committed and not just compliant. Because I think compliance just nobody ever comes back and says, well, I was truly compliant on that work and it was my career best. Those things don't go together.
Couldn't agree more. Michelle Tinsley, ladies and gentlemen. Michelle, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Well, our website is just easy, www.sciata.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to join networks. And again, my approach is just meet people for, say, 15, 30 minutes in a call and truly get to know them versus just saying, yeah, I have a lot of LinkedIn followers, but I don't know who they are.
This is the way to go. In the day and age of AI, building true relationships. We'll put all the links in the description, Michelle. I can say one thing for sure. It's that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn that's ended into a call. We are now connected on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.